Okay, so welcome everybody to this presentation today on the board's role in advocacy. I am happy to present to you this presentation today. It was run as a workshop at our ACLCO AGM earlier in April, which had great attendance and really good feedback on the importance of this work, especially for this time in the clinic system, given all of the political challenges that we have going on. So the learning and training team is myself, Naomi O'Morale. I'm the program manager here at the ACLCO, and I have my assistant, which you've been interacting with, Sosa Nassar, and we're here to support you for these webinars, and very, very happy to present Terry and Daphne of Board RX. So I'm going to pass it over to Terry and Daphne to carry on with the presentation. If at any time you need anything, please chat with us on the chat function, and there will be an evaluation coming out at the end of this webinar. Thanks so much. Terry and Daphne, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Naomi. This is just to say, by way of introduction, here's our smiling faces, Daphne Fitzgerald and Terry Russell. Both of us have been involved in boards for a number of years ourselves. As the nonprofit board members, we know exactly what you're going through. And in addition to that, we both have experiences both in the private sector and in the nonprofit sector. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Terry so she can say a few words.
Oh, hi, everyone. Yes, as Daphne said, we've both been involved with boards, and we've been working with community clinic boards for about 15 years now, so we know some of the issues you face as board members of community clinics. So we're very, very happy to be helping with this advocacy topic at this juncture in your history. So now, people did identify themselves in the chat box at the start at Naomi's request. If there's anyone who would like to add anything in terms of telling us a little bit about who you are and why you're on the call, this is your option, your opportunity rather. If anybody wants to test that, either on the chat line or just calling it out, that would be great. All right, we have someone, bonjour, from ALS Toronto. Welcome. See, we have about 6 or 7. We've got Susan, JD, Gary, Claire Lise, so on. All right, so I guess everyone, and we've got a few anonymous, so that's fine. Just thought we'd give you a chance, but we'll move on. Here's our agenda for this session. We're going to try to wrap this up well before 6. Hopefully that will happen, and keep to our promise of it not being more than 45 minutes. So the introductions are done. We're now going to move on to a definition of advocacy to help everyone get on the same page with respect to advocacy. What are some of the hoped-for outcomes of boards and clinics taking advocacy steps? Within that framework, what are the responsibilities for advocacy at the ACLCO level, the clinic executive director level, and then finally, most important to people on the call, I'm sure, at the board and board member level. Then we're going to take you through a brief group exercise to get you thinking about this a little bit more, and it's based on one that we did at the training event at the AGM just recently. And finally, we're going to ask each of you to think about what would be a call to action for you and your clinic moving forward. Finally, we'll go over what webinars are coming up in the near term and wrap up this session. Okay, so let's just start with getting a sense of why you are on a clinic board, and you can either do that again through the chat line or just call it out. Put yourself off mute and call out why you're on a board.
This is JD Ashworth. Hi.
Thanks,
can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
I'm brand new to the board for Community Legal Clinic in York Region, and just excited to kind of give back to my community and learn how we can support people who have low income in the region and to protect them in the various ways that they under threat in lots of ways.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, it's Gary here. I got involved with my clinic back a long time ago when I was a law student, and I thought it was fascinating and making a contribution, so I've stuck around ever since.
All righty, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, that's fine. So people have their own reasons for being on clinic boards.
And
what,
there are
if anything...
I said hello as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. Okay. So, second part of this question is, what comes to mind for you when the topic of advocacy and your role as a board member in terms of advocacy is raised? Do you have any concerns or any specific questions that we can maybe help answer at this session?
I have a concern in that I'm not used to speaking with politicians or people in beyond kind of at my municipal level. So that's it'll be kind of new territory for me.
Fair enough. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Haley. So I'm sorry, I'm just joining.
Hi, Haley.
Hi. So I tend to be more on the counseling side, advocacy for clients and needs. So sometimes it gets a bit legal for me, and it feels like another language. So that's the only time I really kind of struggle.
Okay, all right. I'm chuckling because just having heard all the reports on the Mueller report today, talk about legalese, right? It can get a bit confusing, yes. Okay, fine. All right, so maybe we can help with that a bit. Okay, thanks, Haley. Anyone else want to weigh in here? Okay, well, we're not going to spend time, if we don't need to, so we'll just move along, and at least those are two topics we can hopefully try to address, and perhaps the others that people might have in the back of their mind will come up as we go through these. So I'm going to turn it back over to Daphne now to talk a little bit about what's being said out there with respect to advocacy and not-for-profits.
So it's interesting, there was a National Council of Nonprofits survey done not too long ago asking a number of questions of volunteer board members. And the question of advocacy came up, and it was interesting that less than half of the boards that were surveyed by Board Sources, you might be familiar with Board Source. If not, feel free to Google them and take a look. They have some excellent tools online. This was back in 2014, and less than half of them reported that they were aware of or participated in their organization's advocacy work. When you think about all of the potential that you have on a board, not being able to harness that, it is unfortunate. That's because some board members continue to believe, and quite incorrectly, by the way, that nonprofits can't do advocacy. And your executive director can give you a lot more information about that. But certainly, advocacy is an important part of what a board member can contribute to. But as we heard on the phone, there are a lot of concerns and questions that people could have. And so it's important that you work closely with your clinic director and with the other members of your board so that you're staying in your lane, so to speak. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, so to understand what your role actually is and what you can do to help.
So there were a few more comments that we had on the chat about people's roles.
Okay.
Claire is saying to participate in the well-being of my community, helping the poorest of our community dismantled community. And Claire's background is nursing, keeping the integrity and impartiality. SF, Susan Fletcher is saying, will advocacy hurt the clinic's funding in the future, i.e. retribution? And Gary's saying, I think many board members don't see advocacy as part of the job description for board members. And then we have Susan Hanson saying, sometimes not sure what my role is as a board member to be an advocate without risk to our clinic. Claire says, I have not done advocacy with a big A so far, but little chat helps. And sorry, just seeing what else I missed here. Also, not used to speaking with people in the media and being an advocate this way. So those are the comments so far in the chat.
Okay.
That's great. Sorry about that, not reflecting that. Alrighty, thanks so much, Naomi.
And so, so there we have some views back, and I think they're all really legitimate. Terry and I have both been involved in advocacy efforts as nonprofit board members, and so a lot of the things that people have already touched on are things that absolutely have to be addressed, not just today, but as you go through this with your executive director at the local level. So what are people saying about advocacy? We just had a few quotes that we found as we were putting together the original session that we did at the AGM. And I'm not going to read these out, but there are some, there are some people that have written books that talk about this or talk about it in passing on their basic topic. This is my favorite, the Wes Stafford, who is an advocate, a fairly well-known one in the United States. I spend half my time comforting the afflicted and the other half afflicting the comfortable, and so there is some truth in that. And then that last one, I just wanted to say too that having a culture of advocacy is not an easy thing to build, but it is possible. And a board that has a culture of advocacy, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're talking to politicians every day of the week, or that you're out there making some noise that might cause that retribution that somebody mentioned. But it does mean that the board has a culture of believing that as ambassadors of their organization, that they can play a positive role. And even though advocacy isn't often mentioned in a job description for a board member, oftentimes things like representing or being an ambassador does get mentioned, because there is a role that the volunteer folks who are part of the clinic fabric can play. The thing about advocacy is that if you Google it, there are lots of definitions, but they really all come down to these two. That the idea of trying to create public awareness of a particular cause or a policy, one that tries to influence the decisions of a government or another authority, and certainly what's going on right now in the clinic system, it really is reflected in these two definitions. And I just put some synonyms on the bottom there, because oftentimes the language can change, but really it's all about getting in alignment. In some cases, defending, more often than not, championing, endorsing, supporting, backing. So you'll hear a lot of those words used in some of the material that's gone out already and will probably still to come. So moving on, what would you expect the outcomes to be of an advocacy campaign, and particularly the one that you're all embarking on right now? Well, certainly that increasing the awareness of the value of the clinic and the system, what it brings to the table in terms of a healthier community, is one that's really important. Clarifying your clinic's point of view to community leaders, politicians, and others, not just the members of government, but also other community leaders, other people who have influence in your community who may not even know about the clinic and the great work it does. Representing those in the community who depend and rely on the clinic and the system, and I think that was just what somebody just earlier said, that people who sometimes don't have a voice and need somebody to speak up for them, and building that guiding coalition that you can call on to act whenever this clinic's message needs to be heard. What does it look like? Speaking the truth in a calm but unwavering voice. We talked to a really impressive clinic director before we met at the ACLCO AGM, and one of the things that she really emphasized was being able to stay calm, speaking the truth, but not letting the emotion get into it. And that unwavering voice is a really important voice, reminding the decision maker of shared values and beliefs that we all have. Testing out solutions in to community problems, not just saying, well, it's a good thing to have, but saying, here's a problem we have in our community, and here's what our clinic does to resolve that problem. Helping the leaders who make decisions understand the impact that it's not just about saving money, but it's also about the impact it's going to have on the community if the clinic is doing its job properly, and what would happen if it wasn't, and standing for what we know to be true and using our voices. So who's responsible? Well, as we said at the ACL-CIO AGM, Henry Ford isn't necessarily one of our favorite people in the whole world. However, we thought that this particular quote of Henry Ford's made a lot of sense, because coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success. And nothing can be more successful than a really well thought out advocacy program where everybody is sticking to their knitting and sticking to their job responsibilities. The ACL-CIO in this particular case has a really important role to play, and here are three key roles that they have. Again, I'm not going to read them to you. Some of you may already have seen some of the information that's come out already, and if you haven't, your executive director will be sure to share it with you, I'm sure. But this is a very coordinated effort that has to start at the top, and the ACL-CIO is in that role. Your executive director has a really important role, and needs to be the driver of all of the local clinic advocacy efforts. So that's the person who organizes the town halls. That's the person who organizes those events where a discussion can be held with people who are making decisions. Executive directors lead the staff and the board on advocacy efforts. They're an important part of educating board members on the key issues. So it's not just giving you something to read, but it's being able to answer your questions at board meetings. And then ensuring that the clinic's advocacy plan is aligned with the ACL-CIO province-wide advocacy efforts. The board role is an important one too. And this is where we get more focused, supporting the executive director. And that's really important because there will be some times when, because of your advocacy efforts that are critical, you're going to have to put other things on the back burner. And board members have to understand that. You may come to a board meeting expecting to hear all about this thing that you were going to do at the local level this month, and it's now been deferred because instead your executive director is heavily involved in being able to meet the demands of this advocacy effort. As part of a formal campaign and under the guidance of the ED, advocate. So nobody's going to throw you out there in front of a politician without a lot of training, without a lot of support, without a lot of work on the part of your executive director to make sure you're in the right place at the right time, talking to the right person for the right reasons, and armed with all the right messages, and being there to support you in that role. And then finally, understanding the difference between passion and emotion. And again, it comes back to the earlier comment, because when a board member gets involved, oftentimes the passion is real. You know exactly what it's going to mean to your community. And what you have to do is try to keep that passion there, but take the emotion out. And there can sometimes be anger, frustration, worry, anxiety as part of the emotion, and those are the ones that you want to try not to show. I'm going to turn it over to Terry now, because she's going to take you on a little bit further on your role and your voice.
Okay, thanks, Daphne. Yes, so why is the board member voice so important in this effort? It's because you're the voice that people who are making decisions in your community want to hear. It's your voices. They certainly will want to hear from your executive director and staff members with whom they deal on a regular basis. But you're the citizen leaders in your community, and it's your voice that will make the biggest difference, in our opinion, with those decision makers, whether they're at the local level, the provincial level, etc. As such, you can serve as powerful ambassadors and champions for your clinic's mission, what you're trying to achieve for your community, what you have been achieving, where you want to head in the future. So again, that's a very powerful tool, and it's also a way in which you can help build positive relationships within the community. It doesn't just have to be at the political level, it can be at other community-based organizational levels. So a very important piece of the puzzle in trying to make this message clear. And here are some of the very clear messages that the ACL-CIO has prepared and can be used at your local level. So the first is that this cut to the provincial budget is extremely disturbing, potentially devastating to those who are relying on the services provided by clinics, and those tend to be people in low and moderate income situations which have very few other options. And it will certainly have a direct impact on frontline service and jobs, which is something the current Premier promised would not happen. So because community clinics are small and very lean, they are storefront offices, and they are, staffed by people whose jobs could be affected by this. And certainly last but not least on this particular message list, you are nonprofit organizations governed by volunteer boards of directors. Again, that very important community voice that needs to be heard and that represents the community itself. So again, important pieces of the puzzle. My particular favorite in all the advocacy messages here is the first one here, that everyone in every one of the 72 clinics deals directly with the clients, and that goes back to that lean structure that clinics have prided themselves over the years with, and that flies in the face of a promise that frontline jobs would not be cut in this budget. That this particular cut proposed substantially decreases the services that you can provide to your community, very essential community services, and if the next two aren't the two that should resonate most, let's help us all, because if the work of the clinics is directed at preserving the basic essentials of life, keeping a roof over people's heads and some income to put food on their table, what could be more important? And then one that could resonate more broadly even than that is that whenever you take money from legal aid away, you increase other areas of government spending in areas such as homelessness, health, family matters, and ultimately, unfortunately, incarceration. So these are some very key messages that the ACLCO is hoping each clinic can impart in some way, shape, or form within their community. All right, so this is our group exercise, which we based on some of the training we did at the recent AGM. And just so you know, it was one of 6 topics we asked your colleagues across the system to discuss, and there was very lively discussion on all of them. And I'm sorry, Daphne, we lost it just briefly. Okay, I hope everyone can see the screen again. So these were the 6 topics that we asked groups to talk about and share their ideas on at the AGM, and the summary of that information will be coming your way in the near future from Naomi and Sosan. But we thought for today's session, what we'd like you to focus on is the last one, to give you an opportunity to think about and share with your fellow board members on this call what you think your community would look like without your clinic, serving the needs of the groups that we've mentioned. And the way we're going to ask you to do this is primarily through the chat line, because if I read what's been done correctly, there are any issues or discussion, you might want to use the chat line for that. But if, in fact, we can unmute everyone, we're welcome to hear you say it out loud as well. So the first thing we ask people to do is think about, if you think about what your community would look like without the clinic, who's important to influence in that regard? Who do you want to speak to about your message, to send your message to? So anybody, either on the chat line or in person, please share your thoughts with us. Who are the important players? Okay, politicians is the first one that came up. At local MPP. Local media outlets. And I think we have a really clear message here, which is that it's a disaster, an absolute disaster for for Aboriginal people. I'm going to leave that for our next slide. But other groups you want to make sure you talk. Faith communities is another one. Faith communities, Daphne?
Sorry, I heard
Hello?
faith.
Wait. Yeah,
I heard
faith.
Yep.
Is
that, yeah, got that.
All right, food banks, employees themselves, municipal leaders. It's a great list. Okay, so I think we're going to stop it there. All right, politicians, municipal leaders. All right, unless there's one more different group you thought you might want to influence. I would only add, you may have very significant partners in the community, like community health centers or such, that you would like to help better understand what would happen in the community without you. They may already know that, but it might be nice to remind them on occasion. Agencies, okay, someone else added agencies. Alrighty. So the last one we have there, Daphne, is agencies. I'm not sure Daphne heard me. Okay, great. All right, so now let's go to the next question we asked everyone at the AGM to answer.
Terry, can I just jump in? I'm on mute, so you don't have to hear me typing. But just to say, there's a slight delay when I'm not on screen slideshow. Just so you know, I'm getting it, I'm hearing it, but you're not seeing it come up quite as quickly as you might like. But it's still working.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to go back on mute.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so for this first one, I want to go back to what someone said earlier, that this is an absolute disaster for Aboriginal communities. What other things do you want to say to whomever it is you think is important to approach on this matter? Anyone have any other thoughts you have that you want to share, that you would want to say if, in fact, you found yourself either in front of a local politician or at a local media site? Okay, here we have vulnerable clients not being given options, more clients for food banks, number of homeless people will increase, more pressure for ODSP, more agencies will have to take on more work. I need a little clarification on the Truth and Reconciliation question. What is the plan of your participation in Truth and Reconciliation? More constituent inquiries for MPPs and MPs, so more traffic in their offices that they may not want. And I'm not clear I understand the question with respect to the plan for participation in Truth and Reconciliation. So perhaps if it's Claire, if you could clarify that for me. Oh, who will take on, thank you, who will take on the legal work with respect to Truth and Reconciliation? Got it. Thank you. Another, more crimes. Increasing risk for suicide because of the impact on poverty, on people suffering from poverty. I think I'm understanding that correctly. Again, not under the What about the TTC, the city responsibilities? Another one is mental health crisis could occur with clients without hope. Just put a question mark beside city responsibilities. Part of the reason we're putting all this down on paper...
You mean besides trying to correct my spelling here?
Well, no, it isn't that, but the question was about the city responsibilities and a question mark with respect to that. And then potential mental health issues or crises, increased violence against women and children. These are all amazing messages that need to get out there. That I was saying to Daphne earlier today, unfortunately, some of the impacts of the work you do is invisible because you're solving problems at such a critical stage for people that we don't, as citizens in the community, don't always see the face of the issues. But these are really important messages to get out, that this is all going to increase. And I think potential mental health crisis, if you could add there, Daphne, can occur with clients without hope. I think that's an important thing, too, to just add in there. And what I was starting to say earlier is we're capturing all of this so that we can share it more broadly in the system so other people and other colleagues of yours on boards can see it. All right, so now I'm going to move on to the next question. And so let's say you're out there talking to whomever it is that you feel you need to influence. What do you expect their response will be? What do you think is the most likely response you'll get? Let's say if you're talking to a local MP about this and suggesting there'll be an increase in constituents coming to their offices with problems, or increased pressure on ODSP or provincial plans, etc. What do you think they're going to... okay, our first one is they'll be surprised by the impacts. I think that's very fair. Another, we are looking into it. Right, we're not going to do anything, but we're looking into it. A very strong next one, denial, exclamation mark, and obfuscation. I never can say that word properly. The old pivot approach. The next one I have here on the chat line.
Okay, spell that last one.
OBFUS.
There we go.
CATION.
No, that's wrong too. But guess what? Spell check is wonderful. Okay.
Okay. Then there is so much chaos. Like everybody, all we citizens created the chaos, but let's not go there. Might suggest that we're over-exaggerating. These are not issues in our town. Poor people don't vote. In the case of Toronto, it's a rich city, so why should we worry? Refugees aren't citizens, so why should we be helping them, I'm assuming? We're preserving services for citizens, and refugees aren't citizens. Focuses on economic development, so we can't worry about this kind of thing. Okay, so while there's a pause on the chat line, I think we'll go to the next question. Excuse me. So here's where it gets, really tactical. How will you help the people you're saying these things to see it your way, see it from the clinic perspective? when you think about, that this isn't the highest priority, this doesn't happen in our town. If there's more violence, we can't attribute it to this necessarily. If there's more mental health crises, etc., how can you help them see it your way? Any thoughts? Okay, first one I see here is back it up with hard facts, numbers of people helped. Give testimonials from those who've been helped. Invite leaders to sit or visit on committees to hear the real stories and issues. Suggest they visit some of the horrible apartments people have to live in. Any other suggestions? They're all great. Everything has been very, very thoughtful so far. This is all great. These are things that certainly help people see the reality of things. Another suggestion is participate in the Poverty Coalition. Another great one is leaders need to be invited to be part of a good news story. They love that. So we can help them be part of a good news story. Suggest they visit food banks and ask why we even need them in our province. Okay, this is an amazing list. As I mentioned, we have some ideas that came out from the session, and I think you guys have gone even way further than the group did at the session we ran at the AGM, so we thank you for that. So again, part of this is just to help everyone share the thinking and try to, collaborate a little bit more on how these messages need to get out there and as we said earlier, resonate with the people that can make a difference for the future of community clinics. And so now we're going to ask each and every one of you to think about what is one step that you would be willing to take personally as a legal clinic board member after this webinar to help support the Save the Legal Clinics campaign. Is there something that's now jumped out at you or you thought of before the session that you think you could take on as a board member to help support the Save the Clinics campaign? Anyone? We're not going to keep note of who said what necessarily and hold you to it, but anything jump to mind that you think you would be willing to do as a board member. Okay, attend a meeting with an MPP is one suggestion. I can say on that note, when I was on the board of the Women's Legal Education and Action Fund back in the day, I went out with the executive director to a number of MPPs to talk about our issues, and MPs, because they were both provincial and federal, the issues we were facing. And I had a script, and we had our roles that we would play, and we worked it out ahead of time, and it was very powerful, I thought. Next one is reach out to local media reporters. Sorry, Daphne, I'm not seeing this on the screen.
I'm not.
You're not typing any of these.
No.
Okay.
No, not.
Okay.
And I just say too that I think that the important thing is that if board members have ideas of things that they'd be willing to do, this is something to discuss at the board table. It's not something to go off and do on your own, because as we said earlier, one of the board members' responsibilities is to play an active role in part of an organized campaign that's led by the executive director. So the board has to speak with one voice and the clinic has to speak with one voice. And so it would be really important if you were willing to talk to a member of the media that it was organized by your executive director, that you had a script before you did it, and maybe you had somebody from the clinic there to support you. Really important for people not just sort of go off in all directions, and it has to all be part of a concerted campaign. That said, if you're one of those people willing to do that, then at the board table, when you talk about what you're doing in your local community and at your local board level, if you're one of the ones willing to put up their hand and say, if you need a volunteer for that, I'm your man or I'm your woman, that's great, because that's one of the things that people are most reluctant to do. So just to say it.
Right, I couldn't agree more. So, and one of the suggestions was a public forum to communicate the situation to community members, again, through the coordination of your executive director and staff of the clinic, and then, your script, as I mentioned with the work that I did, what you say at whatever situation, whether it's media, community session. Another thought here was participate or amplify social media campaigns, so take this to a different forum, if you will, or set of forums, so people can get the message in ways that they might not otherwise.
Can I just say too that a letter writing campaign is really important, and some people are not comfortable going to a meeting and meeting with an MP, but are quite happy to rally their neighbors and rally their friends to get involved in the letter writing campaign. And I've had that experience where I've been the person who's been sitting in front of the federal member of parliament, but back home I've got fellow board members who are whipping up the troops so that 100, 200 community letters go out to that same MP, and both of them are important contributions. So everybody has a part they can play. Not everybody's going to be comfortable doing any of the things, but between you all, you can get it all done.
Right, and going back to the social media campaign, certainly that's been effective in my thinking for all sorts of initiatives where the letter is actually crafted for you, and then you sign and send it to your MPP. And then I have another suggestion here where network with other agency board members. I think that with your partners in the community, I think that would be a really important other thing to take on. Particularly if you are a client of another agency or know of clients in other agencies, there's a way to informally, someone said at the very start that informal chats or small chats help, and they do. And so even just chatting somewhat informally, I think, can be helpful. For myself, I think it's important to talk with local residents associations that I'm a member of, so residents understand how this could negatively affect them, and, help us all with the notion of, our community and why we want it to be a vibrant one and not one plagued with the issues that people raised earlier. So help prepare for the next church and, again, faith organizations. So perhaps go, again, if you're having coffee after a faith meeting, you might want to chat about some of your concerns with respect to the community clinic closing. There's also local business improvement associations that might be interested in hearing this message. Okay, so I think we have lots of potential calls to action, and again, it's important to, stay in the right lane, as we said earlier, and ensure that if you are out there taking these steps, that you are understanding what your role is and how best to do it. And in fact, one really simple thing that I think everyone on this call could do is just ask at your next board meeting what would be an important first step for you to take as a board member in the community moving forward on this campaign. If you don't already have some direction, you could go to the board meeting and ask for it. All right, back over, I think, to you, Daphne.
Yeah, just want to always, before we close, just remind everybody that there's more training. It says upcoming training. Some of the training has happened already, but there's still more to come. This is a list that we shared at our very first webinar in this series of some key roles that the board plays. The list never changes. It's those same 10 things. And just to say that when it comes to ensuring adequate and financial resources, the board's role in managing risk is coming up. The board's role of advocacy is part of enhancing the organization's public standing, and we've done that today, but I believe that there may be an opportunity for another one of these advocacy webinars to be held, and if so, I hope you'll let your fellow board members know if you thought it was worthwhile, encourage them to come and join us. There is something on assessing how effective the board is. We did that already, and you'll be able to find that recorded one on the website, along with the role of the board member. And best practices in ED evaluation is also coming up. Not up there, but one that we were just talking about today is a webinar on understanding financial statements, and possibly offering that up later this month. So you'll hear more about that from Naomi, and you can always go to the board website, to the Onboard Legal Clinic's website, and let's just see if this works. I'm just going to click on that, and looks like it's actually loading. I'm hoping it's coming up on your screen. But if you go to onboardlegalclinics.com, and there we are, you can look at current webinars by clicking on the link, and it'll show you all of the different webinars that are coming up. You can click the appropriate link, and you can actually sign up for it. And there's also some archived webinar material that you can go to. And if you click that link, I think all you have to do is sign in. And just so you know, the username is always board member. I'll type that in just to show you, board member. And the password is all one word, lowercase Carver. And if you hit sign in, I think it will take you to the archived webinar. So there's a lot of great resources on the Onboard Legal Clinic's website. It's a great place to also contact Naomi about anything to do with learning that you might have a question about, so that we can get your name and your email address and follow up with you. So I think with that, I'm not quite sure how I do this. I'm just going to, look at that. Comes back to thank you. So Terry and I just want to thank everybody so much for coming on the call today. I hope it was helpful. And please be sure to send your feedback. And I'm going to stop now and let's see if Naomi has some follow-up ending words to say.
Great. Thanks so much, Terry and Daphne, for that presentation. It was great taking us through those skills and understanding sort of the impact that board members can have in their role as an advocate. Like Terry and Daphne mentioned, there are a few more webinars coming up in this series, and the one on June 10th is now going to be focused on financial skills. So you will find more information on the website, as well as a registration email coming out about that. So thank you very much, everybody. Please complete the evaluation for us before you sign off, and we look forward to having you at another webinar. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.